She was dared to kiss the scariest alpha king in a Texas club. She tipsily walks up to him. The tequila had barely stopped burning her throat when Rose felt the cold metal press against her ribs. Not a gun. Worse. Silver-tipped syringe. Military grade. The kind that could drop a fully shifted alpha in 3 seconds flat. Move and you're dead, Omega, the mercenary whispered, his breath reeking of cheap cigars and violence. Before we fully unwrap this super interesting story that will leave you gasping for more, I want you to take a moment. Get comfortable, because this one carries mystery, deep emotion, and moments that echo long after the final word. If stories like this resonate with you, we'd truly love to hear from you. Drop a comment and tell us where you're listening from: Illinois, Toronto, the New Hemisphere, or anywhere else in the world. It means more to us than you know. And if supernatural romance and werewolf tales hold a special place in your heart, please like this video, subscribe to Gracie Werewolf Story Bank, turn on the notification bell, and share this with someone who loves getting lost in powerful stories. Now, settle in. Let the story take you. Chapter 1. Rose's apartment in East Austin smelled like mildew and broken promises. Rent was 3 weeks overdue. Her landlord, a grumpy beta named Patterson who wore the same flannel shirt 4 days running, had left another threatening note taped to her door. The electricity had been shut off twice this month. Her phone was one payment away from becoming a very expensive paperweight. Being an Omega in the supernatural world was like being invisible with a target on your back. Too weak to matter. Too vulnerable to ignore. She worked doubles at Rosie's Diner off Interstate 35, serving chicken fried steak to truckers who tipped in coins and couldn't be bothered to learn her name. Her pack. The Austin Ridge pack. Barely acknowledged she existed. No family, 23 years old, and already disappeared. That's what Omegas did in 2024. They faded into the background noise of stronger wolves' lives. Which is exactly why Tessa, her so-called friend and fellow waitress, knew Rose would be easy prey. "Girl, you need to live a little," Tessa said that Thursday evening, leaning against Rose's rust-bucket Honda Civic in the diner parking lot. Tessa was a beta with bottle blonde hair, too much eyeliner, and the kind of confidence that came from never worrying about rent. Rose muttered something non-committal, counting her tips. $43 for 9 hours of work. Not even enough for groceries. No, you survive. There's a difference. Tessa lit a cigarette, blowing smoke toward the pink Austin sunset. When's the last time you did something crazy? Something that made you feel alive? Rose didn't answer because they both knew the truth. Never. There's a party tonight at Velvet Moon. Everyone's going. Open bottle service until midnight. Come on, you deserve a night out. Rose had been working 6 days straight without a break. Her body ached. Her feet throbbed. The thought of putting on heels and pretending to have fun felt like climbing Mount Everest in flip-flops. "I don't have anything to wear. You can borrow my black dress. The short one." "I don't have money for an Uber. I'll drive." "Rose, seriously, you're 23, not 73. You've got to stop acting like life is already over. Just come have a good time. Dance. Have a few drinks. Forget about rent and bills for one night." Something in Tessa's voice, a weird urgency, a forced cheerfulness, should have tipped Rose off. But desperation and loneliness have a way of drowning out common sense. When you've been invisible for so long, any attention feels like validation. 2 hours later, Rose found herself squeezed into a dress that was definitely not made for girls with curves, standing outside Velvet Moon as heavy bass rattled the windows and luxury cars lined the valet area like metal sentries. Velvet Moon wasn't just a club. It was neutral territory. A place where all the Texas packs, Austin Ridge, Houston Shadow, Dallas Steel, San Antonio Blood, could gather without starting a territorial war. Run by a council of retired alphas, it operated under strict rules. No shifting inside, no challenges, no bloodshed. Break the rules, and you'd be banned from every pack establishment from El Paso to Beaumont. Rose felt the weight of dozens of eyes as she walked through the door. Alphas sized her up with predatory interest. Betas sneered. Other Omegas looked away, recognizing a fellow bottom feeder. The scent of expensive cologne, sweat, and wolf musk was overwhelming. Neon lights pulsed in rhythm with music so loud Rose felt it in her chest. Bodies pressed together on the dance floor, a writhing mass of supernatural energy and bad decisions. Tessa grabbed Rose's hand, pulling her through the crowd toward the VIP section where a group of younger pack members were doing shots and laughing too loud. "You made it!" Tessa's voice was too bright, too rehearsed. A beta named Bridget, known for sleeping with half the Dallas pack, grinned like a shark. Well, well. The invisible Omega finally shows her face. "Be nice," Tessa warned, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Rose just needs to relax and have some fun. Girl's been working herself to death." Someone shoved a shot of tequila into Rose's hand. She hesitated, then threw it back. The burn felt good. Real. Like proof she was actually here, actually doing something other than wiping down tables and dodging groping hands. Then another shot appeared. And another. The room started to blur at the edges, sounds becoming softer, her anxiety loosening its grip. The constant weight of bills and eviction notices lifted, just for a moment. For the first time in months, Rose felt almost normal. That's when Bridget leaned in close, her breath hot against Rose's ear. "See that guy in the corner? Black leather jacket, sitting alone in the private booth." Rose followed her gaze through the haze of bodies and strobe lights. Lucas Ashford. Even in a room full of predators, he radiated danger on a completely different frequency. He sat alone in the darkest corner booth, roped off, reserved, untouchable. Untouched champagne in front of him, face half hidden by shadows. Tall, easily 6'4". Broad shoulders. Dark hair that looked like he'd just rolled out of bed, but in a way that made you want to run your fingers through it. But it was his eyes that stopped your heart. Silver. Not gray. Not light blue. Actual metallic silver, glowing faintly even in the dim light. The mark of the Death Alpha. "That's Lucas Ashford," Bridget whispered, voice dropping to something between awe and terror. "He killed 3 rogues last year just by touching them. They say his energy is radioactive. One kiss, and your insides turn to liquid." Rose felt ice slide down her spine despite the alcohol warming her blood. Everyone in Texas knew the legend of the Death Alpha. A genetic mutation so rare that only one appeared every few generations. Their power was so intense, so toxic, that physical contact with them was lethal. They lived alone, died alone, and in between, everyone kept their distance. "Why are you telling me this?" Rose asked, alarm bells finally starting to ring through the tequila fog. Tessa's smile turned cruel. Sharp. Like a knife finally showing its edge. "Because you're going to kiss him." Rose's stomach dropped. The alcohol suddenly felt like poison in her veins. "What? No. Absolutely not. It's a dare, Rose. You're always too scared to do anything fun. Prove us wrong. Walk up there, kiss the Death Alpha, and I'll pay your rent for 2 months. Rose's stomach dropped. "You're insane. I'll die." "Probably," Bridget laughed. "But wouldn't that be one hell of a story?" The group erupted in cruel laughter. The kind of laughter that comes from people who've never had to worry about survival. Who've never known what it's like to choose between electricity and food. Rose tried to back away, but Tessa's grip tightened on her wrist. Her fingers dug in hard enough to bruise. "Come on. You said you wanted to have a good time, to feel alive for once. This is your chance. Or are you going to spend the rest of your life being too scared to even exist?" The words hit harder than they should have. Because they were true. Rose had spent 23 years being invisible, scared, small. What did she have to lose? An eviction notice? Another shift serving eggs to men who didn't see her as human? A life that had already ended before it began? The tequila made the decision easier. Or maybe it just made her stop caring about the consequences. "Fine," Rose heard herself say. 2 months' rent. Cash. Deal. Rose's legs felt like water as she crossed the club. Every step toward Lucas Ashford felt like walking toward an execution. The crowd seemed to part instinctively, wolves recognizing prey heading toward a predator and getting out of the blast radius. Conversations died as people noticed where she was headed. The music seemed to dim. Even the bartender paused mid-pour to watch. Someone whispered, "Is that Omega seriously? She's drunk. She's dead." Lucas didn't look up as she approached. He sat perfectly still, one hand wrapped around his untouched champagne glass, the other resting on the table. Even from 3 feet away, Rose could feel the energy radiating off him. Not heat, exactly, but something deeper. Something that made her wolf instincts scream run. The bouncer guarding his booth moved to block her path. 6'5" of pure muscle and warning. Lucas raised one hand. "Let her through." His voice was deep, rough, like gravel wrapped in silk. The kind of voice that commanded without raising volume. The bouncer stepped aside immediately. Rose took a shaky breath and stepped into the private section. The velvet rope might as well have been the gates of hell, for all the safety it promised. Hi," Rose managed, voice barely above a whisper over the club music. His head lifted slowly, deliberately, like a wolf deciding whether something was prey or threat. Those silver eyes locked onto hers, and the entire world stopped. The club noise faded. The crowd disappeared. For one impossible moment, it was just Rose and Lucas and the crackling energy between them that felt like touching a live wire. "You should leave," Lucas said. His voice cut through the music with unnatural clarity. "Before you get hurt." Rose's wolf whimpered in her chest, torn between terror and something else. Something that felt disturbingly like recognition. "I know what you are," Rose said, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. "Then you know this is a bad idea." "Probably the worst," she agreed. "So, why are you still standing there?" Good question. Rose didn't have a good answer. Just tequila courage and a lifetime of being told she was worthless. Just the bone-deep exhaustion of playing it safe and still losing. Just the reckless desperation of someone with nothing left to protect. "Because I'm tired of being afraid." Something flickered in Lucas's expression. Surprise, maybe. Or recognition. His silver eyes searched her face like he was reading a language only he understood. "What's your name?" "Rose." "Rose." He said it like he was tasting the word, testing its weight on his tongue. "I'm going to give you one chance to walk away. And if I don't, then what happens next is on you." Rose's heart hammered against her ribs. Every survival instinct screamed at her to run. Every cell in her body recognized the danger radiating off this man like heat from an open flame. But something deeper, something she couldn't name, kept her feet planted. She leaned forward. Lucas went completely still. Not the stillness of relaxation, but of a predator deciding whether to strike or spare. "Don't," he warned, but he didn't move away. Didn't call the bouncer. Didn't do anything except watch her with those impossible silver eyes. Rose closed the distance. Her hand touched the table for balance. Her breath caught in her throat. And kissed him. The moment their lips touched, the world exploded. Chapter 2. Energy slammed through Rose's body like lightning. Not pain. Not exactly pleasure. Something else entirely. Raw. Primal. Overwhelming. Like every nerve ending in her body lit up at once. Like touching the sun, and somehow not burning. She gasped against Lucas's mouth, and his hand shot up to grip her arms, not pushing her away, but holding her steady as wave after wave of power poured between them. Rose felt her wolf rise for the first time in years. Not in fear, but in recognition. A howl built in her chest that had nothing to do with pain, and everything to do with finally finding something that fit. The club erupted in chaos. Holy. She's still alive. That's impossible. The music actually stopped. The DJ abandoned his booth. The entire club went silent except for the sound of shocked whispers and the thud of Rose's heartbeat in her ears. But Rose barely heard them. She was drowning in Lucas, his taste like champagne and mint and something darker, wilder. His scent wrapped around her like smoke and pine and rain-soaked earth. The way his fingers dug into her arms like he was afraid she might disappear, like she was the only solid thing in a world that had just tilted sideways. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Rose stumbled backward. Her lips tingled. Her skin hummed with residual energy. She felt alive in a way she'd never experienced, like someone had plugged her into an electrical socket and flipped the switch. Lucas stood slowly, and the crowd scattered like roaches when the lights come on. He was even bigger standing up. Towering. Dangerous. His silver eyes blazed with an intensity that should have terrified her, but instead sent heat pooling low in her stomach. His chest rose and fell with unsteady breaths, and for a moment he looked as shaken as Rose felt. "What did you do?" His voice was rough, almost accusatory, but underneath it Rose heard something else. Wonder. Fear. Hope. I don't know. You shouldn't be alive right now. Lucas moved toward her, and people literally dove out of his way. The velvet rope separating his booth from the rest of the club might as well have been a fortress wall the way wolves scrambled away from it. Everyone I touched dies. Every single person. And you just... He reached out slowly, almost reluctantly, and brushed his fingers across her cheek. Rose felt the same electric current, but no pain.
No burning.
Just connection. Like completing a circuit. Like finding a missing piece she hadn't known was gone. Lucas's expression shifted from confusion to something that looked almost like hope, and that scared Rose more than anything else that had happened. Because hope was dangerous. Hope meant expectations. Hope meant she mattered, and mattering meant she could be used. "You're immune," he whispered, his thumb still tracing her cheekbone like he couldn't quite believe she was real. "What does that mean?" "It means..." A glass shattered nearby. Tessa stood frozen near the bar, her face pale with shock and something that looked like fear. Her perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide the way her hands trembled as she pressed them against the bar top. "This wasn't supposed to happen," Tessa breathed, her voice carrying in the unnatural silence. "You were supposed to." Rose finished, anger cutting through the fog of sensations still thrumming through her veins. Her wolf snarled in her chest, done being prey. That was the plan, wasn't it? Send the worthless Omega to kiss the Death Alpha. If I die, it's no big loss. If I don't, what, Tessa? What was your endgame? Tessa's silence was answer enough. Her eyes darted to someone in the crowd, a flicker of communication Rose almost missed. Lucas stepped between them, his presence radiating menace. The club lights seemed to flicker around him, responding to his energy. The air itself felt charged, dangerous. "Who put you up to this?" "Nobody. It was just a stupid dare." "Liar." Lucas's voice dropped to something lethal, and Rose watched Tessa's face go from pale to ashen. "Someone sent you to test whether an Omega could survive my touch. Someone wanted to know if I could be controlled."
Who was
it? Tessa's eyes darted toward the exit. Lucas moved faster than Rose could track, blocking Tessa's escape route. The crowd pressed backward, giving them a wide berth. Some wolves were already edging toward the exits, recognizing a storm brewing. "Answer me or I'll..." "Lucas." Rose's voice cut through his rage. She didn't know where the authority came from. She'd spent her whole life making herself small, invisible. But something had shifted when their lips touched. Something fundamental. "Let her go." He turned, surprise clear on his face. "She tried to kill you." "I know. But we're in neutral territory, and I don't need her death on my conscience." Something in Lucas's expression softened. His shoulders dropped a fraction. The killing intent radiating off him dialed back from lethal to merely dangerous. He stepped aside. Tessa bolted like her tail was on fire, pushing through the crowd and disappearing into the Austin night. The club remained frozen, everyone staring at Rose like she'd just sprouted wings. Like she'd become something other than the invisible Omega who served coffee and kept her head down. Lucas moved closer, his voice dropping to something only she could hear over the slowly resuming music. "You need to come with me. Now." "Why?" Because in about 5 minutes, every alpha in this club is going to realize you're immune to my touch. Do you know what that makes you? Rose shook her head, but dread was already pooling in her stomach. The most valuable wolf in North America. His eyes scanned the crowd, already noting threats. Several alphas were whispering urgently into their phones. Others were moving closer, circling like sharks scenting blood in the water. They'll try to take you. Use you as leverage against me. Or worse, experiment on you to figure out how your immunity works. That's insane. This is the werewolf world, Rose. Nothing's insane. Everything's currency. His hand found hers, and that same electric heat pulsed between them. Grounding. Dangerous. Addictive. I can protect you, but you have to trust me. I don't even know you. You know enough. His silver eyes held hers, and Rose saw the truth in them.
He was dangerous, yes. Deadly.
But also lonely. Isolated. As much a prisoner of his power as she was of her weakness. He was right, and they both knew it. Rose had gone from invisible to extremely visible in under 5 minutes, and the weight of 100 predatory stares told her exactly how dangerous that was. She could feel the attention like heat on her skin, like being under a microscope. Okay, she whispered. But I need to grab my... No time. Lucas pulled her toward the back exit just as the front entrance slammed open. 3 massive wolves in human form stormed in, wearing the crimson patches of the Houston Shadow Pack. Security tried to stop them but backed off immediately when they saw who it was. The leader was a scarred beta with cold eyes and a military bearing that spoke of violence as second nature. He pointed directly at Rose. The Omega stays here. Alpha's orders. As laugh was dark and utterly without humor. Tell your Alpha to come get her himself. Don't make this difficult, Ashford. She's just one Omega. She's my Omega. The words hung in the air like a declaration of war, like a line drawn in blood. Rose's wolf stirred for the first time in years, responding to the claim with something between terror and exhilaration. Mine, her wolf whispered.
Ours.
The beta's hand moved toward his weapon. Lucas moved faster. One moment he was standing beside Rose. The next, he'd crossed 15 feet and had his hand wrapped around the beta's throat. The beta's eyes went wide with pain, his skin turning gray, veins bulging black as Lucas's toxic energy poured into him. The smell of burning flesh filled the air. Screams erupted throughout the club. People stampeded toward the exits, supernatural reflexes turning the evacuation into a chaotic blur of bodies. Tell your Alpha, Lucas said softly, his voice carrying despite the chaos, that the Death Alpha has claimed his mate. Anyone who touches her dies. Slowly. He released the beta, who collapsed gasping and wheezing on the polished club floor, his skin already starting to heal but his eyes holding the memory of agony. Lucas returned to Rose, scooped her up like she weighed nothing, and carried her out the back door as the club erupted into complete chaos behind them. His motorcycle. A massive black Harley, sat in the alley, chrome gleaming under the security lights. Hold on, Lucas ordered, settling Rose in front of him. The engine roared to life, and they shot into the Austin night at speeds that should have been illegal. Rose clung to Lucas's chest, feeling his heartbeat against her cheek. Fast, strong, alive. The wind whipped her hair back. The city lights blurred into streams of color. Behind them, headlights appeared. Then more. They were being followed. Lucas took a hard right, then a left, weaving through traffic on I-35 like gravity was optional. Rose's stomach dropped as they hit 90 miles per hour, then 100. He moved with supernatural precision, reading traffic patterns before they formed, taking exits at the last possible second. 20 minutes of high-speed pursuit later, they pulled up to a building in downtown Austin that Rose recognized immediately. The Ashford Tower. 45 stories of steel and glass, the tallest building in the city. Owned by Lucas's family, rumored to be fortified like a military compound. She'd seen it 1,000 times from the diner, never imagining she'd set foot inside. Lucas pulled into an underground garage, swiping a keycard that opened a private elevator. The garage was empty, pristine, with security cameras tracking their every move. They rode in silence to the top floor, tension crackling between them like static electricity. Rose could still feel the phantom press of his lips against hers. Still taste him. Still feel that connection humming just beneath her skin. When the doors opened, Rose stepped into the most stunning penthouse she'd ever seen. But it wasn't the luxury that caught Rose's attention. It was the isolation. Heavy curtains that could block out the world. Reinforced doors with multiple locks. Air filtration systems humming quietly in the corners. This wasn't just a penthouse. It was a prison designed to keep one very dangerous wolf contained. "Welcome to my cage," Lucas said quietly, reading her expression. He moved to the bar, poured himself 3 fingers of bourbon. "Make yourself comfortable. You're going to be here for a while." "How long is a while?" Lucas downed the bourbon in one swallow, his throat working. Met her eyes with those impossible silver irises that seemed to see straight through her. "Until we figure out why you're still alive." Tell me in the comments, at what moment did your heart start racing? Was it the dare, the bond, or Lucas claiming her as his omega? Chapter 3. The first night, Rose slept in the guest room and didn't sleep at all. Every creak made her jump. Every whisper of wind against the windows pulled her back from the edge of unconsciousness. She kept replaying the kiss, the electricity, the overwhelming sensation of rightness, and trying to convince herself it meant nothing. Just adrenaline. Just survival instinct. Just the tequila still working its way through her system. But her lips still tingled. Her wolf still paced restlessly beneath her skin, whining for something Rose couldn't name. At 3 a.m., she gave up on sleep and wandered into the living room. Lucas was already there, working on his laptop. Rose's mouth went dry. He was built like violence, all lean muscle and dangerous edges. Scars crisscrossed his back, silvery white against his skin, each one telling a story of survival. But it was the tattoo that made her breath catch, a massive wolf rendered in intricate black ink, covering his entire left side from ribs to hip, its eyes the same impossible silver as Lucas's. "Can't sleep?" he asked without turning around, like he'd known she was there the whole time. "Can you?" "Never could. Not for years." He finally looked at her, and those silver eyes seemed to glow faintly in the darkness, reflecting the city lights. "My energy doesn't let me rest for long. It builds up, becomes unstable. Usually I have to discharge it."
"How?"
"Fighting, mostly. Sometimes I go out to the ranch lands outside Fredericksburg and just let it burn through me.
Tasty."
Ground turns black. But nobody gets hurt.
His jaw tightened.
At least, no one who doesn't deserve it. The loneliness in his voice made Rose's chest ache. She'd spent her whole life feeling invisible, but at least she'd been surrounded by people. Lucas had spent 6 years as a weapon everyone was too afraid to be near. That sounds terrible. Lucas's laugh was bitter, sharp enough to cut. "You have no idea. I've been like this since I turned 21. 6 years of everyone I touched dying. 6 years of isolation. Do you know what it's like to go years without human contact? Without a hug, a handshake, anything? I haven't felt another person's skin against mine without killing them since before you could legally drink." Rose thought about her own loneliness, different, but just as painful. Being surrounded by people who looked through you like you were glass. Being touched by men who saw you as an object, not a person. Different prisons, same bars. "I've been invisible my whole life," she said softly, moving closer despite every instinct telling her to keep her distance. "Maybe that's not the same, but I understand what it's like to feel untouchable." Something shifted in Lucas's expression. He moved closer, stopping just inches away. Close enough that Rose could feel the heat radiating off his skin, smell his scent, pine and rain, and something uniquely him that made her wolf purr. Close enough to be dangerous. "You're not invisible to me," he said, his voice rough. "Because I'm useful. Because I'm immune to whatever this is."
"No."
His hand lifted, hesitated in the space between them like he was still afraid she might shatter, then gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. That same electric current pulsed between them, but softer now. Almost gentle, like a live wire wrapped in silk. Because when I look at you, I don't see an omega or a weakness or a problem to solve. I see someone who's strong enough to survive what should have killed her. I see someone brave enough to face the death alpha even when she was terrified. I wasn't brave. I was desperate. Sometimes those are the same thing. His thumb brushed her cheekbone, and Rose's breath hitched. You walked up to me knowing you'd probably die. That's not desperation. That's courage wearing a different mask. They stood there in the darkness, the city lights casting shadows across Lucas's face, and Rose felt something shift between them. Something that had nothing to do with immunity or biology, and everything to do with recognition. Like looking in a mirror and seeing someone else's scars match your own. Two lonely wolves who'd found something unexpected in each other. Can I ask you something? Rose whispered. Anything. What does it feel like when you touch me? Lucas's expression turned vulnerable in a way she hadn't seen before. The death alpha disappeared, leaving just a man who'd been alone too long. Like I've been holding my breath for 6 years, and suddenly I can breathe again. Like every part of me that's been on fire is finally cooling down. Like... He paused, searching for words. Like coming home. Rose's heart stuttered in her chest. Before she could think better of it, before fear could override instinct, she took his hand. The electric pulse was there immediately, but underneath it something else, a warmth, a connection, a sense of rightness that defied explanation. Her wolf settled for the first time in years, curling up like it had found its den. Safe. Protected. Home. Lucas's fingers tightened around hers, his eyes closing like he was memorizing the sensation. Rose, I need you to understand something. What happened between us at the club, that wasn't just immunity. It was a bond. A mate bond. That's not possible. Omegas don't bond with alphas like you. They do if they're fated. His eyes opened, silver blazing in the darkness. And we are. I felt it the moment our lips touched. Like someone took every broken piece of me and welded them back together with you. The word hung between them like a loaded gun. Fated. Fated mates were legendary. Rare beyond measure. Two wolves whose souls were literally designed for each other, whose bond transcended pack politics and biological limitations. The kind of connection that started wars. That made wolves burn down the world for each other. You're saying we're... Rose couldn't finish the sentence. Couldn't make it real. I'm saying that kiss didn't just prove you're immune to my energy. It proved you're meant to stabilize it. To absorb it. To be the one person in the world who can touch me without dying. Lucas stepped closer, his free hand coming up to cup her face. His palm was warm, calloused, gentle despite the violence Rose knew it was capable of. And if that's true, Rose, then you're not just the most valuable wolf in North America. You're the most dangerous. Why? But she already knew. Already felt the weight of understanding settling on her shoulders like chains. Because every pack from here to Seattle is going to want to control you.
To study you.
To figure out if your immunity can be replicated. To see if they can bottle what you are and create an army of death alphas with omega handlers. His thumb traced her lower lip, and Rose shivered. And they won't care whether you survive the process. They won't care if dissecting you kills you, as long as they get the answers first. Fear spiked through Rose's chest, cold and sharp. She'd spent her whole life being nothing, and now she was suddenly too much. Too valuable. Too dangerous. So what do? We get ahead of it. We make you so dangerous that no one dares try. His other hand came up, framing her face between his palms like she was something precious. We make them believe the Death Alpha has found his queen. That taking you means war with me. And trust me, Rose, no pack wants that war.
How?
Lucas's smile was dark and full of promise. Predatory. The kind of smile that said he'd already calculated every angle and liked his odds. Tomorrow night, there's a gathering of the Texas Council. All the major pack alphas meeting to discuss territory disputes. It's neutral ground, sacred law. We're going to walk in there together, announce our bond publicly, and dare anyone to challenge our claim. Rose's stomach dropped. That sounds incredibly dangerous. It is, but it's also our only move. His forehead touched hers, and Rose felt the bond pulse between them, strong and undeniable. Once the bond is publicly recognized, taking you becomes an act of war against me personally. Even the boldest alpha thinks twice about that. And if they don't? Lucas's eyes met hers, and in them Rose saw the truth. Saw exactly what he'd do to anyone who tried to take her. Saw the violence and devotion tangled together like barbed wire wrapped in roses. Then I'll show them exactly why everyone calls me the Death Alpha. And when I'm done, there won't be enough left of them to bury.
Rose should have been terrified.
Should have run screaming from the casual way he talked about murder. But instead, she felt safe. Protected. Like for the first time in her life, someone was willing to burn the world down to keep her from being hurt. You barely know me, Rose whispered. I know enough. I know you're brave. I know you're kind even when the world hasn't been kind to you. I know you saved a man who tried to warn you away because you thought letting someone die would hurt your conscience. His hands slid down to her shoulders, thumbs brushing her collarbones. And I know that when you kissed me, something inside me that's been dead for 6 years woke up. That's enough. Rose's wolf howled in agreement, pushing against her skin, wanting to be closer.
To mark. To claim.
To make this bond real in ways that went beyond words. What if this is just biology? Rose asked, needing to voice the fear. What if it's just your body recognizing I won't die from your touch, and mistaking that for connection? Lucas's laugh was soft, almost sad. Then I'll take it. I'll take biology and chemistry and whatever else lets me feel something other than isolation. But Rose... He tilted her chin up, forcing her to meet his eyes. This isn't just biology. I've touched objects that don't die. I've worn gloves and felt nothing. But with you, it's not about survival. It's about completion. Like I've been walking around missing half my soul and didn't know it until you showed up and fit into the empty space. Rose's breath caught. Her hands came up to rest on his chest, feeling his heart thunder beneath her palms.
Fast.
Unsteady. As affected as she was. I'm scared, she admitted. Good. Fear keeps you alive. But Rose... Lucas's smile turned gentle, and it transformed his face from dangerous to devastating. You don't have to be scared alone anymore. And when he kissed her this time, slow, deliberate, a promise instead of a dare, Rose felt the last of her resistance crumble. Felt herself fall into the impossibility of them. Two broken wolves finding something whole in the wreckage. Outside, the city slept. Inside, everything changed. Before we continue, I need to say something that's been on my mind. If you're listening to this story right now and you haven't subscribed to Gracie Werewolf Story Bank, I'm genuinely curious, why not? And I mean that sincerely, not in a pushy way. Drop a comment and tell me what's holding you back. Is the content not hitting right? Do you prefer different types of stories? Are you worried about commitment? Because here's the truth. Every subscription tells us that these stories matter. That supernatural romance and werewolf tales have a place in your life. That we should keep creating content that makes you forget about the stress of your day. Chapter 4. 3 days locked in the penthouse. 3 days of Rose learning what it meant to be hunted. Lucas's second-in-command showed up on day 2, a gruff beta named Colt with a Dallas drawl and a beard that looked like it hadn't seen scissors since 2010. He dropped shopping bags on the marble counter, bags from stores Rose had only window shopped at. Your old life? Gone, Colt said, pulling out designer jeans and cashmere sweaters. Anyone tracking your phone, your credit cards, your Instagram, they'll hit walls. Rose Martinez from East Austin officially doesn't exist anymore. That name, Martinez, her mother's surname, from a woman Rose barely remembered. A human who died when Rose was 6, leaving her daughter to a pack that never wanted half-breeds. What about my job? Rose asked. My apartment. Boss paid your landlord a year's rent up front. Left a note about a family emergency in California. Your manager at the diner got enough cash to forget you ever clocked in. Your smoke, sweetheart. Rose should have felt grateful. Instead, she felt like she'd been buried alive. That night, she cornered Lucas at his desk, laptop open, managing whatever empire the Ashfords built their reputation on. You don't get to delete my life without asking. Lucas looked up, genuinely confused. I'm protecting you. By erasing me? By making sure no one weaponizes your past. He stood, moving toward her with that predatory fluidity that made her stomach flip. Rose, within 24 hours of that kiss, 3 different packs posted bounties. Not to kill you. That'd be wasteful.
To capture you. Study you.
Figure out if your immunity can be replicated or extracted. The casual delivery made her blood freeze. How much? Houston offered 50 grand. Dallas countered with 75. San Antonio went 200,000. Dead or alive, but they'd prefer you breathing. Rose collapsed into the nearest chair. Lucas knelt in front of her, his massive hands swallowing hers. You're the most valuable thing in the supernatural world right now. Until we neutralize that threat, you stay here. With me. Where nothing can touch you. This isn't safety. It's a cell. Would you rather be strapped to a lab table? The words landed like a punch. Lucas's face immediately twisted with regret. That was cruel.
I'm sorry.
But you need to understand what we're dealing with. The only reason you're still free is because I'm scarier than their greed. The Death Alpha protecting his mate. Even the boldest packs hesitate before crossing that line. So, I hide up here forever?
No.
We fix this. But it takes time. How much time? Before Lucas could answer, Colt exploded through the door, face drained of color.
Boss.
Massive problem. Lucas was on his feet instantly. Talk. The Western Coalition just issued a formal challenge. They're claiming Rose as unclaimed pack property. You've got 72 hours to hand her over or face sanctions. Who's leading it? Alpha Donovan Reese. The scientist. Lucas's expression went glacial. Of course. Rose looked between them. Who's Donovan Reese? A nightmare, Lucas said. He runs the Western Coalition, smaller packs from New Mexico, Arizona, West Texas. He's also a geneticist obsessed with alpha biology. If he gets you, he dissects me. Exactly. Colt cleared his throat. There's more. Reese isn't alone in this. He's got backing from someone inside the Texas Council. Someone feeding him intel about Rose, about the bond, about everything.
Who?
Don't know yet. But whoever it is, they're high level. They knew about the kiss at Velvet Moon before it happened. They knew Rose would survive. The realization hit Rose like cold water. Tessa, she whispered. That dare wasn't random. Someone paid her to test whether an Omega could survive your touch. Lucas's energy crackled, making the penthouse lights dim and surge. If that's true, this conspiracy runs deeper than we thought. Someone's been pulling the strings for weeks, maybe months. But why? Colt's voice dropped. Think about it. If they prove an Omega can stabilize a Death Alpha, they militarize it. Create bonded pairs, Death Alphas as living weapons, Omegas as their leashes. They could build an army no pack could stand against. The horror settled into Rose's bones. She was. And just valuable. She was a prototype for turning the deadliest wolves alive into controllable weapons. What do we do? Rose asked, surprised her voice didn't shake. Lucas's silver eyes locked on hers, determination mixed with something that looked dangerously close to fear. We make a statement so loud, even Donovan Reese backs down.
How?
Tomorrow night. Texas Council gathering, every major pack alpha meeting to settle territory disputes. Neutral ground, sacred law. We walk in together, announce our bond publicly, and dare anyone to challenge it. That sounds suicidal. It is. But it's also our only play. Once the bond is publicly recognized, taking you becomes an act of war against me personally. Even Reese won't risk that. Colt shifted uncomfortably. Boss, there's one more complication. The Western Coalition hired mercenaries, ex-military, supernatural specialists, the kind who don't respect pack law or sacred ground. How many? At least 20, maybe more, already in Austin. Lucas's jaw tightened. Double security. Lock down this building. No one in or out without my direct approval. Already done. Good. Leave us. Colt vanished. The silence that followed felt heavy. Lucas turned to Rose. I need you to promise me something. What? If things go sideways tomorrow, if the mercenaries move or the council turns hostile, you get to safety. Don't hesitate. Don't second-guess yourself. Colt will already have a way out waiting for you. I'm not leaving you. Rose.
No.
She stepped closer, close enough to feel his energy thrumming against her skin. You don't get to martyr yourself. We're in this together. Fated mates, remember? That means I don't bail when things get ugly. Something in Lucas's face cracked open, revealing vulnerability she'd only glimpsed in fragments. I spent 6 years alone, he said quietly. 6 years believing I'd never have this. Someone who looks at me and doesn't see a monster. Someone whose touch doesn't kill them. Someone who feels like home. His hand came up, cupping her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. I can't lose you, Rose.
Not now.
Not when I just found you. Rose's breath caught. Then she made a choice. She kissed him. Not like before, desperate and reckless and fueled by liquid courage. This was deliberate. Intentional. A promise. Lucas made a sound low in his chest and pulled her closer, one hand tangling in her hair, the other wrapping around her waist. The energy between them pulsed and surged, but it felt different now, like lightning transformed into something warm and golden and alive. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Rose pressed her forehead to his chest. We survived this, she whispered. Together, Lucas agreed. Neither acknowledged the fear pulsing underneath those words. Because they both knew the truth. Tomorrow night, everything would change. And not all changes could be survived. Tell me in the comments, what moment broke you a little? Was it Rose realizing she's no longer safe anywhere? Lucas admitting he's terrified of losing her? Or the promise they make knowing tomorrow could destroy everything? Chapter 5. The Texas Council met in an old cattle baron's mansion outside Dripping Springs. White columns. Wraparound porch. The kind of place tourists stop to photograph on their way to hill country wineries. But underneath that genteel exterior sat a fortress. Reinforced walls, magical wards humming with protective energy, armed guards dressed like ranch hands. This was where real power gathered. Rose wore the dress Lucas chose. Deep emerald green that made her dark hair and brown eyes sharp, elegant, without screaming for attention. She looked like she belonged on his arm. That was the entire point. Remember, Lucas murmured as they pulled up in his blacked-out Range Rover. You don't speak unless I signal. Don't make eye contact unless you're ready for a challenge. And stay within arm's reach. Always. You're making me nervous.
Good.
Nervous keeps you breathing. Colt drove, his eyes constantly scanning the perimeter like he expected ambush at any second. 2 more vehicles followed. Lucas's personal security, all hand-picked betas who'd sworn blood oaths to the Death Alpha. The mansion's entrance was already crowded with wolves. Rose felt every eye snap toward them as they stepped out. Lucas's hand found the small of her back, a possessive touch that broadcast ownership louder than words ever could. The energy rolling off him was palpable, dangerous, barely leashed. Other wolves scattered as they walked through, conversations dying mid-sentence, like someone had cut the audio. Inside, the mansion had transformed into something between a boardroom and a throne room. A massive oak table dominated the center, surrounded by high-backed chairs. Each chair bore a different pack sigil: Austin Ridge, Houston Shadow, Dallas Steel, San Antonio Blood, a dozen others. At the table's head sat Alpha Gerald Thorne of Austin Ridge, silver-haired, cold blue eyes, in his 60s, with a reputation for ruthless pragmatism that made even other alphas cautious. Ashford, Thorne said, his voice cutting through the sudden silence. We didn't expect you to bring a guest. She's not a guest, Lucas replied, his voice carrying that razor-sharp edge. She's my mate. The room exploded.
Impossible.
The Death Alpha doesn't take mates. And Omega? Lucas's energy spiked, making several wolves stumble backward, hands flying to their chests. Anyone have a problem with my choice? Silence crashed down like a guillotine blade. Alpha Victoria Sanchez of San Antonio blood, stunning, in her 40s, silver streaking through her black hair, leaned forward, expression calculating. We heard rumors about Velvet Moon. A kiss that should have been fatal. Her dark eyes locked on Rose. This is the Omega? Her name is Rose, Lucas said, ice in every syllable. And yes, she's immune to my energy, which makes her my perfect match. Or a valuable research subject. Rose's blood turned to slush. A man emerged from the shadows at the back of the room. Tall, lean, wire-rimmed glasses, the kind of face that belonged in university lecture halls rather than supernatural power plays. Donovan Reese, the scientist alpha. Forgive my interruption, Reese said, his voice smooth and educated with a faint New Mexico drawl. But I think we're dancing around the real question. How is she immune? Genetic? Magical? Some kind of environmental conditioning we don't understand yet. Lucas moved, positioning himself between Reese and Rose. None of your concern. Actually, it's everyone's concern. Reese adjusted his glasses, studying Rose like she was a particularly fascinating lab specimen. Death Alphas are nature's most powerful anomalies. An Omega who survives contact with one? That's either miracle or mutation. Either way, it has implications for our entire species. The only implication, Lucas growled, is that Rose is under my protection.
Touch her, you die.
Study her. I burn your entire coalition to ash. Such hostility. Reese smiled, but it never touched his eyes. I'm merely suggesting Rose could be the key to understanding Death Alpha biology. With her cooperation, we could potentially help others like you, Lucas. Imagine a cure for your condition. A way to control the toxic energy instead of being controlled by it. I don't need a cure. But you need her. Reese's gaze flicked to Rose. What happens when she's not around? When the energy builds and you can't discharge it safely? How many people have died because you lost control? Lucas's hands clenched into fists, knuckles going white. That's enough. Is it? Reese addressed the room now, playing to his audience. We all know the Death Alpha is dangerous, unstable. One bad day from catastrophic loss of life. But with Rose, he's stable, controlled. Which begs the question, who really holds the power in this relationship? The implication hung in the air like cyanide gas. Rose felt anger spike through her fear. She stepped forward, ignoring Lucas's warning hand on her arm. I'm not a leash, she said clearly, voice carrying. And Lucas doesn't need control. He needs understanding. There's a difference. Reese's smile widened. The Omega speaks. Tell me, Rose, how does it feel? Absorbing all that toxic energy? Does it hurt? Burn? Or does it feel good? The question felt invasive, almost sexual in its violation. None of your business. Actually, it is. Because if you're truly absorbing Lucas's energy, you're essentially a living battery. And batteries can be charged.
Drained.
Studied. Replicated. Lucas moved so fast Rose barely tracked the motion. One heartbeat, he was beside her. The next, he had Reese slammed against the wall, hand around his throat, silver energy crackling between them like live electrical wire. Say one more word about my mate, Lucas said softly, deadly, and I'll show this council exactly how much control I have. Reese's face was turning gray, veins darkening under his skin, but he still managed to smile through the choking.
See?
Unstable. Dangerous. This is exactly why the Western Coalition has proposed. Enough. Alpha Thorne stood, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade through silk. Ashford, release him. We're here to discuss territory disputes, not watch you commit murder in sacred space. Lucas held on for 3 more seconds, a clear message about who had real power here. Then released Reese, who collapsed gasping and clutching his throat. "This conversation is over," Lucas said, addressing the entire council. "Rose is my mate. Our bond is recognized under supernatural law. Anyone who challenges that challenges me personally. Are we absolutely clear?" Murmurs of assent rippled through the assembled wolves. But Rose noticed something that made her stomach drop through the floor. Alpha Thorn's expression. Not surprised. Not shocked. Expected. Like he'd been waiting for exactly this moment. And in the corner, partially hidden by shadows near a side exit, she spotted a familiar face. Tessa. Their eyes met across the distance. Tessa had the decency to look guilty before disappearing through the side door. "Lucas," Rose whispered urgently, her hand gripping his arm. "Something's wrong. This whole thing feels like..." The lights went out. Complete darkness for 3 seconds. Emergency generators kicked in, bathing the room in blood-red light. And then every window in the mansion exploded inward in a shower of glass and magic and screaming chaos. Chapter 6. Chaos detonated. Wolves shifted mid-leap, bones cracking and reforming in seconds. Security guards yanked weapons. Alphas roared orders that drowned in automatic gunfire and shattering glass. Lucas's arm locked around Rose's waist, yanking her down behind the oak table as bullets shredded the air where her head had been. "Stay down," he shouted over the noise. "What's happening?" "Mercenaries. Reese's people." A canister bounced across the floor, spewing thick silver smoke, designed specifically to suppress wolf senses and abilities. Rose's eyes watered instantly, her wolf retreating in confused panic. Through the smoke, she saw them. Men in tactical gear, moving with military precision. Not wolves, humans hired specifically because they had no pack loyalties, no supernatural code, restricting their actions. One pointed directly at Rose. Target acquired. Northeast corner. Lucas shifted partially, just his hands and face, claws extending, eyes blazing pure silver. He moved through the smoke like a predator built for exactly this kind of violence, and Rose heard screams as his toxic energy did its work. But there were too many. And the smoke kept getting thicker. Rose felt strong hands grab her from behind, yanking her backward through a door she hadn't noticed, a hidden passage in the mansion's paneling. She tried to scream, but a cloth pressed over her mouth and nose, saturated with something chemical and sickeningly sweet. A fast-acting, non-lethal sedative designed to safely render a human unconscious. Her vision blurred at the edges. The last thing she heard was Lucas's roar of rage, more animal than anything human, as he realized she was gone. Then darkness swallowed everything. Rose woke to antiseptic and metal. Her head pounded like someone had taken a sledgehammer to her skull. Her mouth tasted like cotton and chemicals. Her hands were zip-tied to chair arms, the same chair from her vision in the opening, she realized with sick, crystalline clarity. The concrete basement was exactly as she'd remembered. Bare bulbs, medical equipment, the kind of space where screaming wouldn't bring help because no one was listening. A man in a lab coat stood nearby, making notes on a tablet. Not Reese. Someone younger, with the eager expression of a grad student who'd stumbled onto a thesis-making discovery. "Subject is conscious," he said into a recording device. "Approximately 6 hours post-sedation. Vitals stable. No apparent adverse effects from transport. Where am I?" Rose's voice came out sandpaper rough. The scientist glanced at her, almost surprised she could speak. "Houston. Industrial District. Don't worry, we're not going to hurt you. We just need to run some tests." Tests. Blood work, tissue samples, scans to determine how your biology differs from standard Omega presentation. Your immunity to Alpha Ashford's toxic energy is unprecedented. Understanding it could revolutionize supernatural medicine. He said it like he was discussing cancer research, not kidnapping and forced experimentation. Rose tested the zip ties. Heavy duty. Professional grade. "Lucas will find me." Alpha Ashford is currently dealing with aftermath from a multi-pack incident at the Texas Council meeting. By the time he extracts himself and tracks you here, we'll have all the samples we need. The scientist checked his watch. Alpha Reese estimates we have 12 hours before Ashford becomes a concern. You're wrong. About the timeline? About Lucas being a concern. Rose met the scientist's eyes. He's not going to be a concern. He's going to be a body count. Something in her tone made the scientist pause, tablet lowering. Before he could respond, the door at the basement stairs opened. Donovan Reese descended, still wearing those wire-rimmed glasses, looking more like a university professor than a kidnapper. Rose, he greeted her pleasantly. I apologize for the dramatic extraction. If you'd simply agreed to voluntary testing, this would have been considerably more comfortable. You mean if I'd agreed to be your lab rat? I prefer a research partner. But semantics aside, let's discuss what happens next. Reese pulled up a second chair, sitting across from her like they were having coffee instead of discussing her imprisonment. You have a unique gift. One that could help countless wolves suffering from energy imbalances, toxic conditions, even aging-related power degradation. With your cooperation, we could isolate the immunity factor and weaponize it. Reese's smile faltered. Is that what Ashford told you? That I'm some villain? You kidnapped me. I secured a valuable asset being hoarded by an unstable alpha. Reese leaned forward. Rose, Lucas Ashford is dangerous. Everyone knows it. The only reason he's tolerated is because he's too powerful to eliminate safely. But with you as his anchor, his stabilizer, he becomes exponentially more dangerous. Do you see the problem? The problem is you're treating me like property. I'm treating you like what you are, the most significant biological discovery in supernatural history. Reese's civility mask slipped slightly. Do you have any idea how many wolves die every year from power-related conditions? How many alphas lose control and slaughter their own packs? Your immunity could save thousands. But instead, you're wasting it playing house with a death alpha who will eventually kill you anyway. Lucas would never. He won't mean to, Reese interrupted. But one day, when his control slips, when the energy spikes too high, even your immunity might fail. And then what? You die, your gift dies with you, and nothing changes. The words hit harder than Rose wanted to admit. Because she'd thought exactly that, late at night, when Lucas was asleep and she was alone with her fears. If I cooperate, Rose said slowly, if I let you run your tests, what then? You let me go. Reese's expression turned calculating. That depends on what we discover. If your immunity is genetic, we might need ongoing samples. If it's tied to the mate bond, we'd need to study that connection extensively. But yes, eventually, you'd be free. You're lying. I'm being realistic. Rose, you're too valuable to simply release. But we can make your cooperation comfortable. Pleasant even. Better than hiding in Ashford's penthouse like a prisoner. Rose's mind raced. She needed time. Keep Reese talking. Give Lucas a chance to find her. What about Lucas? She asked. What happens to him if you isolate the immunity factor? Ideally, we develop a synthetic version. Create stabilizers that could be administered to death alphas and other high-risk wolves. Ashford would finally have control without being dependent on you. And if that doesn't work? Reese's silence answered everything. Rose's wolf surged with protective rage. You're planning to kill him. Only if necessary. A death alpha without a natural stabilizer is too dangerous to leave unchecked. It would be mercy, really. Before Rose could respond, an explosion rocked the building. Lights flickered. Dust rained from the ceiling. Reese stood abruptly, pressing a finger to his earpiece. Report. What was that? A voice crackled through, distorted by static and raw panic. Under attack. Northeast perimeter breached. It's Ashford. Multiple casualties. Oh God, he's... The transmission cut off with a scream that made Rose's blood freeze. Reese's face drained of color. Another explosion, closer this time. The building shook like something was tearing it apart from the outside in. Rose felt it through the mate bond. Lucas's rage, his fear, his absolute refusal to stop until he found her. He was tearing through Reese's mercenaries like they were paper, and nothing was going to slow him down. Activate Protocol Omega. Reese barked into his radio. Full containment. I want every available asset converging on. The basement door exploded inward. Not opened. Exploded. Wood and metal shrapnel peppered the room. The scientist dove for cover. Reese stumbled backward. And through the smoke and debris, Lucas descended the stairs. He was covered in blood, none of it his own. His eyes blazed silver fire. Energy crackled around him like live electrical current, making the air itself dangerous to breathe. He looked like death given form and purpose. He looked beautiful. Rose. Lucas breathed, his eyes finding her across the room. I'm okay, she called back. Reese pulled a gun. Not regular ammunition, Rose realized with horror. Silver rounds, probably laced with something designed to hurt even a Death Alpha. He fired 3 shots. Lucas moved, but one caught him in the shoulder. He roared, stumbling, his energy spiking wildly. The walls started cracking. The floor beneath them groaned like the building itself was dying. Lucas! Rose screamed. Don't lose control. I'm right here. Focus on me. His silver eyes locked onto hers. And slowly, impossibly, the energy stabilized. Lucas straightened despite the bullet wound, his gaze never leaving Rose's face. You made a mistake, Reese. What mistake? Reese backed toward the stairs, reloading with shaking hands. Thinking I'd come alone. The room flooded with wolves. Colt and Lucas's security team poured through the shattered doorway, followed by, surprisingly, several Texas council members including Alpha Victoria Sanchez. Stand down, Donovan, Victoria commanded, her voice sharp as broken glass. This has gone too far. The council approved this operation. 3 members approved it. In secret. Without proper vote. Victoria's eyes were hard. Kidnapping acclaimed made his grounds for immediate pack expulsion and criminal prosecution. You're finished. Reese's finger tightened on the trigger. Lucas was faster. He crossed the distance in a blur, knocked the gun aside, and had Reese pinned against the wall before the weapon even hit concrete. Give me one reason, Lucas growled. Why shouldn't end you right now? Lucas. Rose's voice cut through his rage. Don't. He's not worth it. Lucas's hand tightened around Reese's throat. For a moment, Rose thought he might actually do it. Then Lucas stepped back, shoving Reese toward Victoria's wolves.
Take him.
Charge him. Lock him up. I don't care. Just get him out of my sight before I change my mind. As they dragged Reese away, Lucas moved to Rose's chair, snapping the zip ties like they were paper. Are you hurt? His hands moved over her frantically, checking for injuries, for damage, for anything wrong.
I've fine.
They didn't hurt me. Lucas, your shoulder. It'll heal. He pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her hair. When I realized you were gone, when I felt the bond stretch across the city, Rose, I thought I'd lost you. You didn't. You found me. Always. I'll always find you. They stood there in the wreckage, holding each other like the world might try to tear them apart again at any second. Colt cleared his throat. Boss, we need to move. This place isn't secure, and we've got injured wolves who need medical attention. Lucas nodded, scooping Rose up like she weighed nothing. Let's go home. Rose was taken in the chaos, trapped, and forced to face Reese's twisted plan. And then Lucas tore through his enemies to save her. The tension, the danger, the bond, they all collided in one explosive moment. Comment below your thoughts. Did you feel the fear, the rage, or the heartbreak? Let's talk about it. And if you were Lucas, how far would you go to save your mate? Chapter 7. The aftermath took 3 days to sort out. Donovan Reese was formally expelled from the Western Coalition and charged with multiple supernatural crimes: kidnapping, conspiracy, assault on a claimed mate. He'd spend the next 20 years in a maximum security facility designed specifically for dangerous wolves. The 3 Texas council members who'd secretly backed his operation were removed from their positions, their packs absorbed into larger territories as punishment. Tessa disappeared entirely. Colt's people found her apartment cleared out, bank account emptied, last seen boarding a bus to Albuquerque. Whether she'd been paid off or just ran out of fear, Rose never found out. She also didn't particularly care, because something had shifted during those terrible hours of captivity. Rose had spent her entire life believing she was powerless, invisible, nothing. But Reese had been terrified of her. Literally kidnapped her because her existence threatened his plans. Multiple packs had bid hundreds of thousands of dollars for her. She wasn't powerless. She was dangerous in ways she'd never imagined. And more importantly, she was loved. Lucas barely left her side during recovery. He insisted she stay in the penthouse, but it felt different now. Less like a cage, more like a sanctuary she'd chosen. They talked for hours. About his childhood, lonely and painful, full of people who saw him as a weapon instead of a person. About hers, similar but different, marked by dismissal instead of fear. About what it meant to be 2 broken wolves who'd somehow found completion in each other. On the 4th night after the rescue, Rose woke to find Lucas standing at the window again, staring out at the Austin skyline like he was searching for answers in the city lights. She padded over silently, wrapping her arms around him from behind. "Can't sleep?" she murmured against his back. "Thinking. About how my entire life changed in one moment. One kiss from a woman brave enough to face death, just to feel alive." Rose pressed closer, feeling his heartbeat steady and strong beneath her cheek. "Do you regret it? The bond?" Lucas turned in her arms, his silver eyes intense. "I regret that you got hurt because of me. I regret that you'll always be a target because you're tied to the Death Alpha. I regret." Rose kissed him to shut him up. It started gentle but quickly turned hungry. All the fear and adrenaline and unspoken emotion from the past week channeling into desperate, consuming need. Lucas lifted her easily, carrying her toward his bedroom, the one room in the penthouse she hadn't entered yet. "Are you sure?" he asked, giving her one last chance to back out. Rose answered by pulling him down for another kiss. What happened next was theirs alone. No audience, no spectators. Just 2 people who'd found something rare and precious in a world that tried to keep them apart. Later, wrapped in expensive sheets with Lucas's arm around her waist, Rose felt something settle deep in her chest.
Peace.
For the first time in 23 years, she felt like she belonged somewhere. To someone. With someone. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. Lucas's arm tightened around her. "I've loved you since the moment you walked up to me in that club, terrified but determined. You were the bravest thing I'd ever seen. I was drunk. You were magnificent." Rose laughed, and it felt good. Natural.
Right.
"So what happens now?" she asked. "The Western Coalition is neutralized. The Council knows about our bond. Reese is locked up. Do we just live happily ever after?" In the werewolf world, Lucas's laugh was dark. "There's no such thing as happily ever after. Just happily until the next crisis." Comforting. "But," he continued, rolling over to face her, "we'll face it together. Whatever comes next, rival packs, supernatural politics, world-ending catastrophes, we handle it as a team. Partners?" "More than that." Lucas's hand found hers, fingers interlacing. "You're not just my mate, Rose. You're my equal. My anchor. The person who makes me want to be better than the monster everyone thinks I am." "You're not a monster. I'm something close enough. But with you." His expression turned vulnerable in a way she'd never seen before. "With you, I'm just Lucas. A guy who's stupidly in love with a woman who's way too good for him. I'm an Omega who worked at a diner and couldn't pay rent. You're literally the most powerful alpha in Texas. I think the too good argument goes the other way. You survived the Death Alpha's touch. Multiple kidnapping attempts. A shootout at the Texas Council. Rose, you're the strongest person I know." The words settled over her like a benediction.
Strong.
Her whole life, people had told her she was weak. Too small, too poor, too omega, too human-blooded. But Lucas saw something different. And maybe, just maybe, he was right. The next morning, Victoria Sanchez requested a meeting. She arrived at the penthouse with 2 guards and an expression that was equal parts respect and wariness. "Rose," Victoria greeted her warmly. "I'm glad to see you're recovering well. Thank you for helping with the rescue. It was the right thing to do. Though I'll admit, the council is still reeling from the revelations." Victoria accepted Lucas's offer of coffee, settling into the living room with practiced grace. "Which brings me to why I'm here." "Let me guess," Lucas said dryly. "The council wants something." "Not want. Need." Victoria sipped her coffee. Donovan Reese wasn't wrong about one thing. Death alphas are becoming more common. We've had 3 emerge in the past decade alone, all of them struggling with control, all of them isolated and dangerous. Your bond with Rose proves that stabilization is possible. "We're not lab specimens," Rose said firmly. "I'm not suggesting that. But I am suggesting you two could help others like Lucas. Consult on cases. Maybe even mentor newly emerged death alphas so they don't have to suffer through years of isolation." Lucas leaned back, his expression thoughtful. "What's in it for us?" "Complete immunity from council interference in your personal lives. Protection from any future bounties or kidnapping attempts. And a seat on the council itself, with full voting rights for both of you." Rose's eyes widened. "Omegas don't get council seats. They do now." Victoria's smile was sharp. "You proved that the old hierarchy doesn't work. Strong doesn't always mean alpha. Sometimes strong means surviving what should kill you and coming out ready to fight." Lucas looked at Rose. "Your call." Rose thought about all the wolves like her, invisible omegas told they were worthless, disposable, weak. All the wolves like Lucas, isolated and suffering because of gifts they never asked for, powers they couldn't control. She thought about the scared girl who'd walked into Velvet Moon just days ago, desperate for one night of feeling alive. That girl was gone. In her place stood someone who'd faced death and lived, who'd been kidnapped and fought back, who'd looked at the most dangerous wolf in Texas and seen not a monster, but a person worth loving. "We help," Rose said firmly, "but on our terms. No experiments. No invasive testing. Just guidance, support, showing people they're not alone." Victoria raised her coffee cup in a toast.
Deal.
After Victoria left, Lucas pulled Rose onto the balcony. The Austin skyline stretched before them, vibrant and alive in the morning light. "You know what this means, right?" Lucas said. "Council seat, political power, influence over supernatural law. You're not invisible anymore, Rose. You're going to be one of the most recognized wolves in Texas." "Good," Rose said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. "Maybe if I'm visible, other Omegas will realize they don't have to accept being treated like they're nothing. Maybe things can actually change." Lucas's arm wrapped around her shoulders, pulling her close. "You're going to change everything." "We're going to change everything," Rose corrected.
Together.
Together, Lucas agreed. They stood there watching the city wake up, 2 wolves who'd found each other against impossible odds, ready to face whatever came next. Because the world had tried to break them, and instead, they'd become unbreakable. Chapter 8. 6 months later, Rose stood on the balcony of their penthouse now, not just Lucas's, watching the sun set over Austin. The city sprawled below in shades of orange and purple, music from 6th Street drifting up on the warm Texas breeze. Friday night, which meant the city was coming alive with energy and possibility. Just like Rose herself. So much had changed in half a year. She'd officially joined the Texas Council as Lucas's co-representative. The first Omega to ever hold such a position, and she wielded that power with careful consideration and fierce determination. Pack alphas who once would have ignored her now sought her counsel. Omegas across Texas saw her as proof their voices mattered. She and Lucas had helped 4 newly emerged Death Alphas, 3 in Texas, 1 from Oklahoma, find their stabilizers and control their powers. Not every match was romantic. Some bonds turned out to be platonic partnerships or familial connections. But all of them proved that Death Alphas didn't have to be monsters. They could be protectors. Heroes even. And Rose had found her voice. She'd started a nonprofit, Omega Rising, dedicated to helping vulnerable wolves get education, job training, and resources to escape abusive pack situations. Lucas funded it generously, but Rose ran it herself, with a small team of fierce Omega women who'd all survived their own hells and come out fighting. There you are. Lucas emerged onto the balcony, wrapping his arms around her from behind. The now familiar electric pulse of their bond hummed between them, warm and grounding. Just thinking, Rose murmured, leaning back against his chest. About how 6 months ago I thought my life was meaningless. I was broke, invisible, convinced I'd never matter to anyone. And now I made it to the Death Alpha, sitting on the Texas Council, running a nonprofit that's helped over 300 Omegas in just 4 months, and she turned in his arms, meeting those beautiful silver eyes. And I'm happy. Actually, genuinely happy. Lucas's smile was pure sunshine. Me too. You know what's funny? What? Everyone always said the Death Alpha would die alone. That I was cursed to isolation and suffering. He brushed a strand of hair from her face with devastating gentleness. Turns out, I just needed the right person to kiss. Rose laughed. So you're saying I saved you? We saved each other. And really, that was the truth of it. 2 broken wolves who'd found each other in the darkness and decided to build something beautiful from the wreckage. The balcony door opened again, and Colt appeared, looking slightly uncomfortable in a button-down shirt instead of his usual tactical gear. Boss, Rose, reservations in 20 minutes. You 2 planning to stand here all night, or actually eat? We're coming, Lucas said, but he didn't move, still holding Rose close. Colt shook his head, a rare smile crossing his gruff features. 6 months, and you 2 are still in the honeymoon phase. It's nauseating. Jealous. Rose teased. Nah. Just happy the boss finally found someone who can handle him. Colt's expression turned serious. You're good for him, Rose. Hell, you're good for all of us. Pack's stronger with you in it. The words hit Rose harder than she expected. Acceptance. Belonging. Family. All things she'd stopped believing she'd ever have. Thank you, Colt, she managed. He nodded once, then disappeared back inside, muttering something about sappy wolves and getting soft in my old age. Lucas pulled Rose closer, resting his chin on top of her head. He's right, you know. You didn't just save me. You saved my entire pack. They were loyal before, but now they actually believe in something. In us. In the idea that strength doesn't mean dominance, and power doesn't require cruelty. We're changing things, Rose said softly. We're starting a revolution, Lucas corrected. And it's terrifying and beautiful, and I wouldn't want to do it with anyone else. Rose thought about the scared girl who'd walked into Velvet Moon 6 months ago, desperate for one night of feeling alive. That girl was gone. In her place stood a woman who'd faced death and lived, who'd been kidnapped and fought back, who'd looked at the most dangerous wolf in Texas and seen not a monster, but a person worth loving. A woman who discovered that weakness wasn't about rank or bloodline, or how loud you could growl. Real strength was surviving, adapting, refusing to let the world define your worth. Come on, Lucas said, tugging her toward the door. Colt made reservations at that new steakhouse you've been wanting to try. And tomorrow, we've got that meeting with the alpha from Louisiana who thinks his daughter might be a Death Alpha. And Sunday, we're visiting Keisha's new bakery in Round Rock. And Monday, there's council business. And Tuesday, we're staying in bed all day because we're exhausted. They both laughed, the sound echoing across the balcony. Life wasn't perfect. They still faced challenges. Rival packs who resented their power, traditionalists who hated the changes they represented, the the constant low-level danger of being high-profile targets in a world that didn't always appreciate revolutionaries. But they faced it together. Equal partners. Fated mates. Two halves of one impossibly strong whole. As they headed inside, Rose caught one last glimpse of the Austin skyline, all glittering lights and endless possibility. 6 months ago, she'd walked into Velvet Moon convinced she was worthless. Instead, she'd found life. And love. And a future, so bright it almost hurt to look at directly. Lucas's hand found hers as they walked through the penthouse, fingers interlacing with the ease of long practice. "You okay?" he asked, reading her mood with the intuition that came from their bond. "More than okay," Rose said. "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." And for the first time in her life, she meant it. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is face your fear head-on. Sometimes all it takes is one kiss to change everything. And sometimes, just sometimes, the scary Alpha King turns out to be exactly what you need. Not because he saved you, but because together, you both became something neither could have been alone. Stronger, braver,
Whole.
Rose squeezed Lucas's hand as they headed out into their life. Their beautiful, complicated, dangerous, perfect life, ready for whatever came next. Because when you've survived the impossible, everything else is just another challenge to face. Together. Always together. This story, right here. This is what Gracie Werewolf Story Bank is all about. Stories about wolves who break the rules. Omegas who refuse to stay invisible. Alphas who choose love over power. Fated mates who prove that sometimes the most dangerous thing in the world is also the safest place to fall. If Rose and Lucas's journey touched you, if you felt the fear, the love, the triumph, I need you to do something for me. Actually do it for yourself. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications. Because we have dozens of stories like this waiting for you. Stories about second chance, mates and forbidden bonds, and wolves who dare to dream bigger than their circumstances. Also, and this is important, tell us where you're listening from. Austin, like our characters? Maybe Toronto? Illinois? The New Hemisphere? Somewhere else entirely? Every comment, every location, every piece of feedback reminds us that these stories matter. That supernatural romance and werewolf tales still have the power to transport us, to make us feel, to remind us that love can bloom in the darkest places. So comment below. Tell us where you're from and which moment in Rose and Lucas's story hit you hardest. Was it the first kiss at Velvet Moon? The rescue from Reese's lab? That quiet moment on the balcony when two broken wolves realized they'd found home?
Tell us.
We read every single comment. And if you know someone who loves supernatural romance, werewolf stories, fated mate tales, or just damn good storytelling, share this video. Send them the link. Tell them about Rose and Lucas. Because stories are meant to be shared. Love is meant to. Oh, be celebrated. And sometimes, the scariest thing you can do is also the bravest. Until next time, this is Gracie Werewolf Story Bank. Keep believing in fated mates. And remember, sometimes all it takes is one kiss to change your entire world. Happy holidays.